Morning reports arrive at Cuban coastal surveillance posts documenting increased overflight patterns from American reconnaissance aircraft operating south of Key West. Radar crews in Havana register high-altitude signatures consistent with U-2 platforms conducting photography of San Cristobal and Sagua La Grande missile sites. Communications units relay track data to Western Army headquarters for classification. No indication of launch activity is reported at any Soviet R-12 positions. In Washington, Joint Chiefs of Staff convene inside the National Military Command Center. Air Force Chief of Staff reviews overnight intelligence. Deployment readiness of Strategic Air Command bomber wings shows continuous airborne alert at maximum loadout. Navy briefers confirm task force operations around quarantine line, with the destroyers maintaining intercept stations along designated vector grids. At the same time, Underground Command Post logs updated submarine contact reports off Sargasso Sea Quadrant, where unidentified acoustic signatures match probable Soviet Foxtrot-class profiles. Decision protocols for engagement remain unchanged pending presidential authorization. In Moscow, Ministry of Defense staff receive partial telemetry summaries from Soviet advisors stationed in Cuba. Reports note intensified American patrol aviation activity around missile approaches, but no attempt to breach internal perimeter. Diplomatic cables prepared for transmission outline planned negotiation directives for next communication cycle. Throughout the island, Soviet engineering detachments continue routine maintenance procedures at launch complexes. Liquid oxygen levels measured, guidance equipment checked, and electrical continuity verified across command circuits. Cuban militia units conduct perimeter inspections around anti-aircraft positions near Mario and Matanzas. No alerts issued. In Washington, White House staff begin assembling preliminary briefing packets for the President's morning meeting, including updated maps of missile fields and reconnaissance imagery processed during night cycle. Defense Liaison Office compiles readiness status of Continental Interceptor wings positioned across northern and western sectors. All tracking data indicate stable but escalating operational tempo. No party involved has reliable information on intentions of opposing command structures. Operations proceed according to standing orders without deviation. Cuban radar stations at La Coloma and Santa Clara begin tracking an American U-2 entering national airspace from the southwest at extreme altitude. Tracking officers relay coordinates to Soviet advisory personnel embedded within local command networks. Identification is confirmed as U-2F reconnaissance configuration, conducting high-altitude mapping run over Western missile deployment zones. Transmission of positional data to Havana occurs through fixed-line channels with no encryption delays. In parallel, Soviet missile regiment commanders at San Cristobal receive standard readiness verification requests from headquarters, directing them to log fuel system temperatures, inspect warhead security seals, and confirm guard rotations at the launcher pads. No changes in alert level are issued. In Washington, National Security Advisor receives initial notification of the U-2 incursion report through Air Force Operations Center. Joint Chiefs staff prepare contingency notes covering possible interception scenarios. Navy liaison officers brief on surface ship movements along the quarantine line where American destroyers continue to challenge Soviet freighters approaching restricted zones. Communications logs document repeated hailing attempts with inconsistent Soviet responses. At Offutt Air Force Base, Strategic Air Command technicians update aircraft rotation cycles for airborne alert bombers maintaining continuous flight loops across predetermined northern routes. Fueling intervals are recalculated to offset unexpected atmospheric crosswinds. In Moscow, General Staff Duty officers study incoming field notes from Cuban advisors, indicating increased American reconnaissance consistency but no direct threat to missile emplacements. Internal analysis teams prepare drafts for diplomatic channels emphasizing continued operational stability on the island. Across Cuba, anti-aircraft crews reposition mobile guns in anticipation of further overflights. Soviet technicians at launch sites perform scheduled maintenance without altering standby posture. In Washington, Situation Room compiles revised briefing maps for senior leadership, marking the U-2's projected trajectory and anticipated exit corridor. All agencies continue routine operations in accordance with standing crisis procedures. No directive authorizing engagement or escalation is issued. Cuban Command Headquarters receives updated radar summaries showing repeated high-altitude tracks west of Matanzas, consistent with continued American reconnaissance operations. Radar technicians report stable signal strength and no deviation in aircraft behavior. Soviet liaison officers present at headquarters transmit consolidated air picture to Group Command via encrypted channels. In western provinces, Soviet missile units at San Cristobal and Sagua La Grande initiate midday equipment checks. Guidance housings are resealed after earlier diagnostics, electrical grounding rods inspected, and warhead security enclosures verified by duty officers according to standard protocol. Mobile launch support vehicles reposition to shaded cover to reduce thermal load on onboard electronics. In Washington, National Military Command Center logs continuous reports from naval interception elements stationed along the quarantine perimeter. Destroyers maintain radar lock on Soviet merchant vessels holding pattern north of the line. Helicopter detachments aboard American carriers conduct routine over-water patrols, charting vessel location, speed, and cargo deck arrangements. Air Force staff complete new threat assessment sheets detailing missile site construction status based on latest photo intelligence. These sheets are forwarded to Joint Chiefs for inclusion in afternoon briefings. Strategic Air Command air crews receive updated flight endurance projections for airborne alert operations, extending across northern patrol arcs. In Moscow, General Staff Duty officers sort incoming telemetry fragments from Cuban advisors, confirming that missile regiments report no anomalies in command systems or launcher alignment. Analysts draft internal summaries noting consistent American reconnaissance tempo but unchanged site integrity. Throughout Cuba, militia units conduct standard midday rotations at air defense positions, inspect ammunition stocks, and verify communications links with local command posts. Highway checkpoints along major logistics routes remain active, regulating movement of fuel convoys supporting Soviet technical detachments. Across all command centers involved, operational tempo remains elevated but controlled. No new directives alter overall readiness posture. At the Cuban missile encampments, Soviet regimental officers receive routine afternoon dispatches from Havana, confirming continued American aerial reconnaissance, but no changes in national alert status. Duty crews at launcher pads resume inspections of cable routing between guidance vans and firing positions, ensuring that signal pathways remain within acceptable impedance ranges. Electrical technicians document minor recalibrations of voltage regulators exposed to midday heat. Communications staff conduct scheduled radio checks with Group Command to verify stability of encrypted channels. Cuban air defense detachments reposition several mobile anti-aircraft guns to adjust coverage over sectors previously exposed to high-altitude overflights. In Washington, the Executive Committee convenes in the Cabinet Room to assess intelligence collected during the morning cycle. Photographic analysis teams present enhanced enlargements showing structural reinforcement at multiple missile shelters across western Cuba. Naval briefers detail movements along the quarantine line, noting that Soviet merchant vessels have reduced speed but continue on established headings. Air Force liaison officers outline interceptor readiness across southeastern bases should escalation occur following any new reconnaissance incident. Strategic Air Command transmits updated airborne alert distribution to the National Military Command Center, indicating several bomber platforms extending patrol duration to maintain continuous coverage. In Moscow, General Staff analysts review diplomatic cables pending transmission that outline negotiation positions for upcoming diplomatic exchanges. Military staff confirm that Cuban missile regiments report full operational integrity, with no deviation from standard procedures. Across Havana, Western Army Headquarters distributes new map overlays to regional command posts marking suspected American surveillance corridors detected during the past 48 hours. No activation orders accompany the distribution. Throughout Cuban and Soviet installations, operations continue under established protocols with no directives modifying readiness or authorizing engagement. In Havana, Soviet advisory officers deliver updated situation logs to Cuban Western Group Command, summarizing afternoon radar observations. Intermittent high-altitude contacts tracked over Camagüey and Matanzas align with projected American reconnaissance corridors. Air defense controllers at Santa Clara verify equipment calibration after minor signal fluctuations attributed to thermal interference. Along the missile sites at San Cristobal, engineering detachments begin late-day maintenance cycles. Coolant lines on guidance equipment are flushed, pressure gauges recalibrated, and protective casing secured for overnight operations. Communications vans conduct standardized transmission checks with Havana on fixed intervals. Cuban militia patrols report normal road traffic along supply routes feeding fuel and provisions to Soviet technical units. No irregular vehicle patterns detected. In Washington, Joint Reconnaissance Center compiles consolidated imagery reports from earlier U-2 runs, distributing annotated maps to Navy and Air Force liaison desks. Analysts highlight structural progress at several launcher revetments, but note no visible signs of fueling or warhead deployment. Navy watch officers provide fresh updates from quarantine line intercept formations. American destroyers continue to shadow Soviet freighters maintaining constant speed and bearing without attempting to cross restricted perimeter. Submarine detection networks report persistent low-frequency signatures southeast of the Bahamas, prompting continued tracking but no engagement orders. Strategic Air Command relays endurance updates for airborne alert bombers on rotation over northern patrol arcs. In Moscow, General Staff receives encrypted summaries from Cuban advisors describing stable site operations and routine maintenance adherence. Documentation is reviewed and archived for political leadership. Across Havana District commands, evening readiness checks confirm that all air defense batteries remain manned and functional as daylight operations transition to night cycle. No command authority issues directives altering current alert posture. Operations proceed under existing crisis protocols across all involved headquarters. Cuban radar installations at Bahia Honda, Managua, and Remedios begin evening scans under reduced visibility conditions caused by coastal humidity. Controllers confirm several high-altitude plots moving along predictable reconnaissance vectors consistent with American U-2 operations earlier in the day. Signal continuity tests indicate stable tracking, and no scrambling orders are issued. Soviet advisors record radar returns for transmission to Group Command, where duty officers compile aggregated air picture summaries for overnight review. At the San Cristobal Missile Zone, Soviet regimental staff initiate night cycle security protocols. Lighting around launch pads is reduced. Guard posts rotate to extended shifts, and equipment shelters are sealed following daytime maintenance. communications detachments conduct encrypted radio checks with Havana at scheduled intervals, confirming no disruptions. Cuban transport units moving along interior roads deliver spare electrical components and rations to Soviet encampments. All convoy logs match expected schedules. In Washington, the National Military Command Center receives status updates from Strategic Air Command reporting full coverage of airborne alert bombers along northern and central patrol arcs. Air Defense Command briefs on interceptor readiness at southeastern bases prepared for rapid deployment should an incident occur. Navy operations officers monitor movement along the quarantine line, noting Soviet cargo vessels continuing on constant headings without deviation. Submarine detection systems register intermittent contact signatures in the Sargasso Sea Quadrant, classified as probable Foxtrot class. Tracking is maintained, but no action is authorized. In Moscow, General Staff officers review encrypted field notes from Cuba, indicating stable operational conditions across missile regiments and support units. Analysts prepare preliminary summaries for senior leadership without recommending any procedural adjustments. Across Havana district commands, evening coordination calls verify that all air defense batteries remain at routine night readiness with fully staffed crews. No headquarters-involved issues, orders altering existing posture. All operations continue under established crisis control procedures. In western Cuba, Soviet missile regiments transition fully into night operations. Perimeter guards along the San Cristobal complexes conduct extended interval patrols along access roads, confirming intact fencing, locked equipment shelters, and clear approach lanes. Duty officers inside the regimental command bunker log routine system checks. Internal communications lines show stable signal strength. Generator output remains within prescribed voltage range, and environmental monitors and warhead storage igloos register no deviations. Mobile support vehicles are repositioned to hardened revetments for overnight concealment. At Sagua Grande and Remedios, Cuban air defense crews complete radar recalibration cycles, compensating for nocturnal thermal gradients affecting detection thresholds. No abnormal tracks appear beyond expected long-range transits associated with American patrol aircraft operating south of Florida. Soviet advisory personnel upload consolidated air activity summaries to Group Command using encrypted short-burst transmissions. In Washington, the White House Communications Center receives compiled briefings from the National Military Command Center detailing quarantine line status, bomber endurance projections, and radar activity across southeastern interceptor bases. Navy situation logs indicate steady Soviet vessel movement toward holding points north of the restricted perimeter without changes in course or speed. Submarine tracking grids in the Atlantic report intermittent acoustic contacts moving at low speed toward deeper water columns. Classification remains consistent with earlier Foxtrot pattern signatures. Air Force officers complete updates to reconnaissance cycle scheduling for the following morning, pending presidential authorization. In Moscow, General Staff analysts review incoming summaries from Cuba documenting stable missile readiness and absence of operational disturbances. Working groups assemble internal documentation for potential diplomatic dispatches without altering standing guidance. Across Havana's regional command network, coordination calls verify that all air defense positions maintain standard night readiness posture with full crews on rotation. No headquarters issues changes to alert levels. Operations continue through the night according to established crisis procedures. In the waters north of Cuba, American destroyers enforcing the quarantine line report steady Soviet merchant vessel positions holding at previously established coordinates. Radar operators aboard the intercept ships track unchanged bearings and speeds, noting no attempts to cross the restricted perimeter. Helicopter detachments conduct short-range illumination runs to verify deck configurations on Soviet freighters, transmitting updated imagery to Navy command elements. Acoustic monitoring arrays detect prolonged low-frequency signatures southeast of the Bahamas consistent with Foxtrot-class submarine movement at minimal speed. Tracking stations maintain contact without receiving authorization for engagement. In Havana, Western Group Command receives late-cycle situation logs from Soviet missile regiments. Officers at San Cristobal confirm sealed launcher housings, offline guidance consoles for night conditions, and stable environmental parameters inside warhead storage structures. Communications detachments complete encrypted link tests with regimental bunkers and forward security posts. Signal quality remains within operational limits. Cuban air defense controllers report limited high-altitude returns west of Camagüey, consistent with long-range U.S. patrol aircraft maintaining reconnaissance orbits. No unexpected signatures are detected. At Sagua La Grande and Remedios, night crews confirm generator output levels and readiness status of mobile anti-aircraft batteries positioned to cover inland routes. In Washington, the National Military Command Center compiles updated cross-branch summaries for early morning distribution. Strategic Air Command reports stable airborne alert coverage across northern patrol arcs. Air Defense Command outlines interceptor readiness based on overnight maintenance cycles. Navy Command Center transmits quarantine line status with no deviations noted. White House staff receive preparatory briefings for possible early morning consultations, including updated maps of Soviet missile zones and revised radar activity overlays. In Moscow, General Staff Duty officers archive incoming field reports from Cuba and prepare internal digests for senior review once morning cycle begins. All participating command centers maintain existing posture. No changes to readiness or operational directives are issued across any sector. In the Northern Atlantic Patrol Sector, American anti-submarine aircraft operating from carrier groups continue sweeping arcs across the Sargasso Sea boundary, reporting intermittent but consistent acoustic signatures identified as probable Foxtrot-class submarines, proceeding at low speed toward deeper water. Destroyers along the quarantine line record stable Soviet merchant vessel positions with no course adjustments, transmitting updated radar plots to Navy Command Center for overnight aggregation. Weather conditions remain stable, allowing uninterrupted tracking across all sectors. In Havana, Central Command receives consolidated site readiness confirmations from Soviet regimental officers at San Cristobal, Sagua La Grande, and Remedios. All launcher housings remain sealed. Internal communications grids show normal continuity, and night security rotations are fully manned. Duty officers verify that no adjustments to alert status have been requested by any forward posts. Cuban air defense controllers report limited high-altitude radar returns, corresponding to American reconnaissance aircraft maintaining peripheral orbits west of the island. No deviations or altitude changes indicative of attack preparations are observed. Logistics detachments complete a scheduled night deliveries of generator fuel and electrical components to Soviet technical teams stationed at remote access roads. In Washington, National Military Command Center updates cross-branch situation summaries in preparation for early morning briefings. Strategic Air Command confirms uninterrupted airborne alert coverage. Air Defense Command details interceptor readiness metrics. Navy staff compile full situational charts showing no shifts in Soviet ship movements along the quarantine line. White House communications personnel prepare classified briefing folders for senior leadership, including updated missile site overlays, submarine tracking grids, and diplomatic cable summaries for potential early consultations. In Moscow, General Staff analysts finalize preliminary internal digests from field transmissions, noting stable operational conditions at all Cuban missile complexes. No command-level authority across Havana, Washington, or Moscow issues directives modifying readiness or initiating escalation. All sectors continue operating under standard crisis management procedures as night cycle monitoring remains steady. North Atlantic Surveillance Grid / Havana Western Group Command. In the Northern Patrol Sector, American anti-submarine aircraft transmit a new contact report showing a Foxtrot-class submarine altering course northeast at low speed, prompting destroyers along the quarantine line to update intercept projections without receiving authorization for maneuver. Naval tracking stations verify that Soviet merchant vessels remain stationary at previously logged coordinates north of the restricted perimeter with unchanged heading and engine output. Weather conditions continue stable, allowing uninterrupted radar and acoustic monitoring. In Havana, Western Group Command receives pre-dawn readiness confirmations from Soviet missile regiments. Security detachments report intact perimeters, sealed launcher housings, operational communications lines, and normal environmental readings inside warhead storage units. Duty officers at San Cristobal log standard equipment status entries indicating no system irregularities. Cuban air defense controllers record isolated high-altitude returns associated with American long-range reconnaissance aircraft maintaining peripheral tracks. No new signatures or altitude changes suggestive of incoming strike patterns appear. Supply convoys complete final night cycle routes delivering fuel and replacement parts to technical crews stationed at access road checkpoints. In Washington, the National Military Command Center compiles final overnight summaries ahead of morning briefings. Strategic Air Command confirms continued airborne alert coverage along northern and central patrol arcs, while Navy Command Center reports no movement from Soviet surface vessels near the quarantine boundary. Air Defense Command logs interceptor readiness across southeastern bases, pending routine morning inspections. White House communications teams finalize briefing packets including updated missile site diagrams, submarine tracking overlays, and diplomatic cable excerpts for early consultation. In Moscow, general staff officers receive complete overnight field transmissions from Cuba and prepare documentation for senior leadership review. Across all command posts, no changes to alert levels or operational directives are issued. Each sector continues to operate under established crisis management procedures as the pre-dawn monitoring cycle concludes.